and good afternoon, good evening to my listeners and to my viewers. I'm your host of A Place Called Through, Patricia Wade Goings, broadcasting from WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. Today, we are so honored to have with us as our guest, Minister Maxine Smalls. Minister Maxine Smalls is going to share with you information and resources regarding COVID-19 stress and anxiety. We're broadcasting from WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network, where we share real stories of real people for our mission of hope. It's all done through those charitable donations. So if you'd like to make a donation, please do so by following us at WYTV7.org. Again, we welcome today Minister Maxine Smalls. Welcome to A Place Called Through.
Thank you, Pat, for having me today to share on mental health and COVID-19. I appreciate the invitation, and I would like to just say a little bit about how I got started with mental health and what I'm currently doing now with mental health. I work with NAMI, the National Alliance of Mentally Ill, and I work with the faith-based side of it, going out to churches and working with clergies and helping their churches to be a more caring congregation with mental health. Now, that is a passion of mine, not something that I asked for, but God has a way of orchestrating your life as to what He wants you to do and where He wants you to be. And I have a son that was diagnosed at the age of 11 with a mental illness, schizophrenia. And because of that and the struggles I had as a caregiver, as a parent, and understanding what mental health was and what schizophrenia was and different illness, I got involved as a volunteer. And as a volunteer, I would help in different arenas and getting information out and educating people. And that became my passion because I found that in the African American community as a whole, we do not have enough information about mental health. So that brings me to this platform today, is to provide information so that I can be a resource to my community and help them with their questions as far as advocacy, things that they could do, and also education, learning more about the different symptoms and signs of mental illness. And those particular areas are areas that you wouldn't know anything about, because I didn't know anything about it until I came involved with it personally because of my son. So I'm here to provide you with information today in reference to the pandemic, COVID-19, and how it is affecting our community, the mental health community. Because there's so many different uncertainties and unknown things that are going on with COVID-19, it has caused a great anxiety and stress, not only to the mental health community, but to everybody is in fear because we just don't know what to expect from day to day. And it's even more so with mental health. The mental health, people who have mental health, they're very vulnerable during this time. And there are some things that they need to do in order to keep themselves safe and others safe. And hearing all the different things that causes fear and anxiety causes them to feel very uncomfortable, even more so than just people who are not diagnosed with any type of mental illness. Now, some of the things that we may not know is that anxiety is the most common disorder in the mental health diagnosis. And because of that, this is where we're going to focus on today, talking about anxiety. And it's common now because of what we're going through, but even before this happened, more and more people, because of COVID-19, are calling in for prescriptions for anxiety. They're calling their doctors, not because they were diagnosed with it, but because they're feeling all of these different fears of not having a job, not having money, lack of food, and all of these different things that make them feel uncomfortable and causes the anxiety.
So
And
what
so
you were saying is the stress and anxiety, it's more prevalent now because of this COVID-19, whereas it has always been in existence, and even more so because of the unemployment, not knowing whether you're going to have a job, if you can go back. And because in some families, unfortunately, some family members have passed away because of this COVID-19. There seems to be an unresolved situation here with COVID. No one really can pinpoint and say, this is the cure or this works. So I would imagine that yes, stress levels are constantly increasing because of the fear of the unknown. If you would, I want to go back with you, Minister Smalls, because when you talked about, your son being diagnosed with schizophrenia and as a mom, so I can imagine that you too were stressed to that point that brought you into wanting to find out more information. How do I handle this? And finding the resources. Most people living in rural areas, there's limited resources. So you went out and found the resources to help you get through that situation. And how is your son relating now to this COVID-19?
now, some of the information that I received was through my church. They had a holistic ministry, and they gave me information as to how to assist me with getting to school, having treatment, different doctors that I wouldn't have to pay for, and then having him have some type of evaluation, a psychological evaluation. So through that, I came in contact with different mental health organizations. National Alliance Mentally Ill being one. Another one is the Mental Health Association of America. And there's other mental health depending on what area you're in. Now, also your local mental health facility or clinic. Each county has, in South Carolina, they have a mental health clinic. And then in the state of South Carolina, they also have information for mental health. So because of the stress that I had involved in this, I just started searching. At that time, we didn't have an internet and all those particular things. So I started asking people. And I think that's the best way to get information. Even though we have internet now to connect, sometimes we need to know by experience. And so I started asking people, and that leads me to the stigma that's associated with mental health. And that's one of the things that's really hard, especially now with COVID-19. Because of the stigma, they're putting a lot of highlight and spotlight on people that's mentally ill. And so what happens is something that was so bad right now seems that people see that they really need to get the help. Is because we're not so busy doing everything. Everything is kind of focused. It's more focused. And so what happens now is we're getting some information on TV. They didn't publicize. They didn't talk about it. Everything was like, shh, don't talk about that. In your families, in your churches, everywhere you go, you would have that stigma. And that caused more stress. And even now, I'm sure that there are people that are feeling hurt, isolated, not really knowing with the mental illness if somebody's going to come and see them one day or call them one day or either FaceTime them or connect with them. If you're mentally ill, you could have other things going on in your head that causes you to have heightened anxiety.
And so how are you feeling, Minister Smalls, that people are relating now, as you said, because there could be heightened, issues going on now that have intensified the stress, the mental illness and the anxieties because of the COVID-19, because it is somewhat of a deadly issue here. And so being a person that has anxiety or you're already stressed out, how are people relating to this added stress now?
People, I'm going to go back to the question that you asked me earlier about my son. I can tell you, he stays at a residential facility in South Carolina, and I talk to him on a regular basis in reference to what is going on around him and what I do at home in order to keep my mind focused on other things other than just what I heard, or how much of it is facts, or how much of it is miscommunicated, because you may see something on TV, or he may see something on the internet, or he may talk to someone that is just an opinion or somebody's way of giving the information, and he may get the information confused. And let's just use, for example, if someone said today they have some way that we could use disinfect to clean our body, and he heard that, they may not be able to decipher what part of it is truth and which is error and which one is fact. And so if you just hear that and you already have cognitive problems, and you're hearing voices and you're hearing all these other things, and you already have a heightened fear, you may just go in the bathroom and say, okay, I'm going to take that upon myself. I'm going to take this like a mouthwash cup, and I'm going to go ahead and swallow this disinfect, because I'm hearing on TV people are dying, and I heard somebody say disinfect. That's all I need to do is just put those two things together and say, okay, this is what we need to do. And what he's doing now is he's realizing the reality is that a lot of times you're going to see and hear things on TV and social media that is not true. And so he calls me and said, well, how much is this is really true as far as your opinion? And I said, well, what I could do is pull up CDC. I look at it and I say, okay, this is what CDC is saying. Now we know this is to be the truth because they've already researched a lot of these things. So I can only tell you what I see, and that information may not be true or part truth, which means that you may not rely on it. Do not rely on it. So I use some of my own experiences to kind of help him. And I also use that for other people that call me for support. There are family members or caregivers that call me from the faith net that call in and say, my family member is in jail, they're mentally ill. What do we do? How do we handle those particular things at a time when COVID is rampant and there's a pandemic? And I say to them the same things I would say as if that was my daughter or my son that was incarcerated.
So when it relates to the church, because not a lot of church have health and wellness ministries, to spread out on some of the topics in those areas, what do you feel that we could do as a body of Christ, as a church, to increase the awareness? Because if you're dealing with the unknown, obviously you won't know what to do. So what would you do to tell someone, where do we begin in the churches so that we can make greater impact on people that are obviously dealing with these behaviors?
One thing that I think is really good is to allow the church, the pastors or the leaders to incorporate programs that will teach and tell signs of things. For instance, every person that hallucinates or may have schizophrenia is not a killer. And so if you knew the signs of it, it would help you to feel more comfortable around the person, knowing that there are certain chemicals in that brain, even though they take medication, that's firing off, that's showing them something that's different, that's in front of them that you actually see in reality. They may hear some things that you may not hear, and how to deal with them so that you don't have the fear. And if churches could just understand and educate themselves, that would help them to be able to deal with people. Because if 1 in 5 people have mental illness, and you're in a congregation, think about how many people are dealing with different portions, depression. We live in a military town, PTSD. You know, what are some of the other areas where people OCD? They have other things that you may not see on a regular basis, but still they can't come out and say, you know what, I have a headache. You know, just like you said, oh, I have high blood pressure. Oh, I have diabetes. They still can't say it. It's kind of like it's still in the closet because you need the education to understand the symptoms, to know that just because a person thinks different, it doesn't mean that something is going to affect you, that's going to be a heightened situation where they're going to kill you. And when people get over that fear, it would help.
And as you said, a lot of this is like closed doors. It's in the closet because people have, in my opinion, have been labeled once they, if you say, oh, I'm schizophrenic or I'm
Crazy.
suffering from, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or, I'm just so overwhelmed with stress. People tend to label you because of those behaviors. And as you noted, because you could have those issues does not say that you're a killer, or that you're going to go jump off the bridge. And I would think that, as you were saying, in the body of Christ, in the churches, the one key thing is that people have to be educated, because right now we're in a society that I believe where before we become educated, we assume. And the assumptions are not always as it should be, because you're assuming I'm so overwhelmed. And again, yes, most of us are overwhelmed with this COVID-19. But the thing is that if we don't know how to take those safety measures, and we don't know the precautions, and we're not following, as you said, the facts, the truth, then yeah, that kind of leaves us wide open there for other areas to come in. And I think that educating the church itself, the leaders of the church, leaders in the community definitely need to be more informed about mental illness as a whole, because it does cover such a wide range. Living in a rural area, I know, is challenging because a lot of times there's limits in
Yes.
terms of resources and available resources that are locally. Living in rural areas, the other situation is that there's no transportation, no public transportation. So people have to rely on other sources of transportation to get to and fro from doctors and clinics, or, offices that can offer them help. So I think that the impact, the church could have would also be to provide some of those necessary things to people, to help eliminate that stress of, well, I've got to go to this doctor, but I don't have a ride to get there. But if we're, coming together to collaborate, I think that would lessen some of that. You spoke earlier too about some of the resources that you were able to, look into that helped you come through. So if you would let's talk about some of those resources and how others can actually rely on those resources and any other resource that you may know of. Because I know a lot of time people also fear going to an office because they feel, well, you're going to ask me 900 questions and I'm going to have a whole list of paperwork that I'm going to have to do. And some people actually have more panic when it comes to filling out forms. So talk to us a little bit, if you will, Minister Smalls, about the relationship that we could possibly, establish with some of those resources.
Well, one of the resources that we have that's a national number, and a resource that we have is they have crisis numbers that's available, as well as text, where you can actually call number 1-800-985-5930. And that's a national number. Whenever you feel that you're in crisis, sometimes what happens is the person that is going through sadness or depression, or feel that they may do something to hurt themselves or someone else, normally they're not aware of it. So they need the people that's around them, the family members or friends or church members, to say, I noticed this. It's not like you snitching on someone. I noticed this is different from the person's regular personality. They are not taking a bath. They're not combing their hair. Their clothes is on backwards. They're not sleeping. They're eating a whole lot more than they normally would. And if this happens over several days, then they need some help. And most of the times, people don't get help themselves. It is friends or neighbors or even people walking down the street and say they keep coming in the store doing stealing, or they go behind the counter and get a hamburger. Or every day they come in the store and they take cigarettes. What's They call the police come and get them and take them back, go get them, take them back. And so why this keeps happening, we train the police force, crisis interventions with mental illness. I'm now at the mental health once a week, working with family members. They're saying, okay, what do I need to do? If I'm not in that mental health, they may not get that from the clinicals, but I can give them the caregiver sign of what to look out for. So these are some of the resources that we have. And the text number that you text to is Talk With Us, and the number is 66746. And that's if a person just want to text and talk to somebody. They might want to just say, I've been crying for days. I can't stop crying. Or you may notice some specific things in your teen behavior that goes on for a period of time that you can't get a handle of. It may seem like it's something that's little, and some people start off with their regular physicians. And the regular physicians are trained to know what some of these things are as it pertains to mental health. So you may want to start there and say, okay, I think something is wrong. But you have to point out something is not right. That's all you have to say. You don't have to diagnose a person or say, I think this, I think that. Just tell them what you are seeing, and there's information that's out there.
Well, looks like unfortunately we're about to run out of time, Minister Smalls. But just to give a recap, if you would like to, if anyone needed to reach out to you or any of the other resources that you provided, if you could reiterate those numbers so that they would know too that there is help available to them. And as always, we do thank you so much for being our guest this afternoon on A Place Called Through. And we just wish you the best and hope that you and your family stay safe. If you would go ahead and, provide that information. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you personally, if you have an email, website, or phone number, please share that with us.
Yes, I can be reached through Maxine, Maxine.Smalls at NAMI, NAMI, lowcountry.org. And you can send me emails there, and I could respond, or I can forward you to other areas that can assist you. If there's things that you need to know as a caregiver, if you have children that you are noticing early signs, and do not, and this is one of the things I had a problem, do not be afraid to have your children. I know there's been a lot of bad publicity on ADHD and a lot of different things, but do not be afraid to take medication. We take medication for diabetes, for high blood pressure. Please do not let that hold you back with being able to get the help and the resources. Also, on the national number, 1-800-985-5930. And if you like to text someone and you need someone to talk to, Talk With Us. 66746 is the text that you can send a text to. And thank you so much for having me at A Place Called Through. Remember, you're not alone. Please stay safe.
God bless you again, Minister Smalls. Thank you so very much for all your encouragement, and we wish you the very best. Once again, to our listeners and our viewers, you have heard from Minister Maxine Smalls sharing issues about mental illness, anxiety, and stress as it relates to COVID-19. Again, I've been your host, Patricia Wade Goings, broadcasting from A Place Called Through on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. And if you'd like to be my guest, you may reach me at pgoings@gmail.com or wytv7.org. Or you may reach me also by phone in area code of 843-608-9744. Please feel free to follow my Facebook page, A Place Called Through, at Willpower, the call to rise above. And in imparting to you, God bless you. We wish you the best, and to all, be safe.